Started an affair of my husband's boss for luxury, but my husband ruined everything. Hello, people of Reddit. Today I'll share my experience as to how I lost the best thing that ever happened to me just because of my greed and my desire to get something better than what I already had. I hope that my experience makes everyone realize to value the relationships they have and to not seek something else. I, female. 26, was married to my ex-husband, male, 28, for 2 years. We got married straight after college. My ex joined a corporate job with a high package while I became a housewife. Me and my ex-husband met in college. We had different courses, but a common group of friends. It brought us closer, and ultimately we started dating. It wasn't meant to be anything serious. We both were just testing waters at that time, but as we spent more time in each other's company, we fell in love and decided to get married. Our marriage life was going as well as it could. My ex had to work long hours because it was his job after getting graduated, and he was set on making a name for himself. I had told him that I'll support him in his dream in every way I can. We were young, and everything felt doable in the initial phase of the marriage. I thought that it wasn't a big deal if my husband had to work late hours at work. I tried to be an understanding wife, but failed miserably. I used to keep scrolling Instagram. People my age were partying with their partner. Someone was going on a trip, whereas I was in the kitchen waiting for my husband to get back home. It started to get to me. I told my ex-husband that we can also take a break and go on some vacation, but he would tell me that we will go just later. At that point, he had too many responsibilities. He promised me that he will do everything to get rich. We had a good home. We were still paying the debt. We had a decent living, it's just that we were really poor, but we weren't Porsche rich, and my ex-husband wanted to get to that level. He had told me in college itself that he wants to become a really big man. I thought that since I was in love with him, it would be easy to support him and be there with him while he worked a life he really wanted. I was going to enjoy the benefits of luxury life as well with him. Turned out that doing that wasn't really easy. We were recent college graduates at that point of time. Everyone was enjoying life and showing it off on their social media handles. I would get jealous of them enjoying their life, but then try to let that feeling go. This started affecting our married life as well. My ex-husband would come late after work, and then I would start telling him whatever I saw on social media about our friends and stuff. 2 things happened after that. Either he would ignore what I was telling him, or he would just make some small vague comment about it like, "Oh, okay," and all. I would get irritated by his reaction and start fighting with him. He was already tired, and then when I started fighting with him, he would get really mad. We stopped talking to each other for many days, and then started talking again when our anger was gone. I felt like he wasn't seeing the sacrifices that I was making for him. I wanted him to value it and appreciate me. I told him the same thing when we were having an argument one day. He got really upset and told me that he did see my efforts, but I was forgetting that whatever he was doing was for our future only. I didn't like the way we fought, but there was no other option left for me. I was frustrated and felt trapped inside our house and in that marriage. My ex and I started getting distant with each other. When I think about it now, the distance was caused partially because of me, but at that point I thought that it was his fault. I was upset at him for not removing the gap between us. Our fight didn't decrease. I would keep telling him how he has changed after marriage and all, whenever I said that all. He would get really angry and then stomp out of the house, shutting the doors, with so much more that it felt like the door was going to break. We started speaking less with each other. Every time we spoke, it was either something related to the house or something that had to be done. I felt even more frustrated as I felt that I was making all these great efforts for my husband's success, and we aren't even happy with each other even after that. Days went like these, and we didn't even talk to each other properly. I was upset that he didn't try to talk to me. Suddenly one day he started talking to me over dinner. He told me that there was some work event and he would like to be there with him. It was sort of an office party. He smiled at me and I smiled back at him. We were finally going to a party, even though it was work-related, and I was really excited. The day of the party, I went to get my nails and hair done. It was long overdue anyway, and this seemed like a good day to go for that. I got ready and left for the party with my husband. It was quite a nice party. The venue was great, and the decorations were on point as well. It was at the rooftop of some 5-star hotel and had a very nice view of the city. I loved being there. For the first time, I was doing something fun. My husband then introduced me to everyone. He had colleagues who were all his age. Everyone was polite. I finally met his boss at that party. When my husband introduced us, I just kept staring at him. He was a very attractive man, slightly older than my husband, but really good on the eyes. He smiled at me and then asked my husband how he was able to spend so much time at work when had such a pretty wife at home. My eyes widened at his statement. He was complimenting me. My husband just smiled at him and told him that I was an understanding wife. I felt a bit of guilt then. I hadn't been understanding at all. I thought that I'll do better from that day onwards. We met more people and had drinks with his colleagues. Everything was going great. There was only one thing. I caught his boss staring towards us more times than one. I thought to myself that it couldn't be a coincidence that every time I looked in his direction, he was looking at me. I ignored that feeling in my stomach and tried to enjoy the party. The party was great. We came back around midnight and both were so tired that we immediately fell asleep. The next day, my husband got busy with his work again. Even though I had decided to be more understanding of each work, it wasn't coming to me. I just felt irritated and upset, but I didn't fight with him again. Days passed like this again. I wasn't really happy, but I made sure that we were civil to each other. It was one afternoon that my husband called for dinner and told me that his boss was coming home for dinner that evening. I asked him why suddenly. I didn't know he was going to invite him that day. He told me it was a Friday night and they were casually talking and his boss mentioned something about having homemade food in the city, so he invited him. He told me that it would have been if he hadn't. I agreed with him and asked him what I should cook. He told me that he will be home early to help me out and that he can pick whatever I need from the grocery store. After the call ended, I started cleaning up the house and all. I started preparing for dinner. My husband came in when I was in the kitchen. He helped me out in the kitchen and then told me that I can go get ready while he'll be here. I nodded at him. I wasn't going to meet his boss in sweatpants. I couldn't decide what to wear. For some reason, I wanted his boss to find me pretty. It was entirely illogical and made no sense, but I wanted that. I got ready and even did some makeup. It was like a no makeup look. When I went down, the boss had already arrived. He was sitting in the living room with a flower bouquet in his hands. He saw me and got up and gave me the bouquet. I was really impressed by him. He was really attractive and charming as well. I smiled at him, and he gave me a smile which seemed flirtatious, but then I thought I was making things up. We had dinner together. He kept telling me constantly that he really liked the food. My husband was happy with that. His boss then told me that I had to give him my recipe for the apple pie because it was really delicious. I told him sure, and then we exchanged numbers so that I can share the recipe with him. The evening went smoothly and he soon left. My husband thanked me for arranging everything so quickly, and I told him it was no problem. We then cleaned up everything and then headed for bed. My husband had to leave for work early the next morning, so slept immediately. I was awake and was scrolling through social media when I got a text from his boss. It was a simple, "Thank you for the delicious dinner," but it made my heartbeat go really fast. I replied to him that it was my pleasure, and that was the end of the conversation. As I looked to the side and saw my sleeping husband, I felt a pang of guilt for crushing on his boss, but I couldn't help it. It wasn't that anything was going to happen between us. It was just a silly crush, I told myself as I went to sleep. After a few days, I got a text from my husband's boss while my husband was in the office. He told me that he loved pie and needed the recipe. I shared it with him, but our conversation didn't end there. He kept making small talk to me, and I also engaged in that conversation with him. At that point, it didn't seem like I was doing something wrong. I just felt that I was having a friendly conversation with my husband's boss. We kept exchanging texts all the time. He was really witty and charming. It was nice to talk to someone like this, especially since I didn't talk to my husband like this anymore. It was a bittersweet feeling, but we kept talking. My husband was so busy with work that he didn't even notice that my attention was completely somewhere else, and for the first time I wasn't bothered by his lack of attention to me. I kept texting his boss usually when my husband was in the office. I found it weird that my husband couldn't make time for me, but his boss could. I thought that maybe I wasn't just a priority to my husband. Days passed like this. I was going to the mall one day to go shopping. When I asked my husband for money before he left for his office, He gave me just a few hundred and said that we should save money right now as we have to pay the home debt and everything. It was really irritating. Every time I asked him for something, he would tell me that we should save and list me some different expenses. I didn't say anything to him and went to the mall. I bumped into my husband's boss there. I didn't tell him that I was going to be here, so it was a surprise. He asked me what I was getting, and I just shrugged and told him that I was window shopping. He told me that he was bored as well and just came here to pass the time. He asked me if I wanted to hang out together. I nodded at him and we went to random stores just laughing and enjoying each other's company. My eyes fell on a limited edition LV bag. It was way off my budget, so I just looked with desire and longing but then kept it back. The boss had noticed it and told me to get the bag. I laughed and told him that I can't. He told me to get the bag and that he will take care of it. I couldn't accept such an expensive bag from him, and I told him the same. He then started talking to the salesperson and then bought the bag. I just kept staring at him in shock as he gave his card and bought the bag, which was worth $3,000. I was shocked that was doing that for me. I was also really impressed as spending such a big amount wasn't a big thing for me, whereas my husband kept fretting when he had to give a few $100. He then gave me the bag and told me it was a thank you from his side for dinner the other day. I was still in shock about everything. I came from a middle-class family. I wasn't used to this type of lavish purposes. I came from a family where we discussed the smallest expenses and only made it when it was absolutely necessary. My crush on him had intensified that day. I was still in a daze when I entered my house with that bag. My husband noticed the huge bag in my hand and asked me what I got. I showed him the bag, but instead of getting happy like I expected him to, he started asking all these questions about how much money I spent in that bag and where I got the money. I got irritated and then decided it's better to not tell him the truth. I told him that it wasn't expensive and I had thrifted it from a thrift store. He was confused as to whether he should believe me or not, but then finally believed me. He said that it made sense and where will I get the money to buy the bag directly from the store? I nodded at him and then took my bag to my closet and kept it properly. I didn't talk to him about anything further related to the bag. He got busy with his work again, and I started texting his boss. I told him that it was really thoughtful of him to give me the bag. We used to text each other back and forth throughout the day. At that point, it seemed like he knew me more than my husband does. That was because he actually gave me time, unlike my husband who had neither time nor money. I immediately felt bad for having this thought. The boss had a lot of interest in my hobbies and how I spent my time alone at home. Everything I told him, he listened with interest. My husband had called me on a Monday to tell me that his boss had asked him to go out to town for a work meeting that night. He came home and packed his bag and then left for the airport. I was alone that night and was in my bed texting his boss about my day and stuff. We had become sort of friends at this point. He was 30 years old and single and lived alone in his fancy apartment. He was funny and charming and really attractive. He asked me that since I was alone, we could have dinner together the next day. I didn't need much convincing and agreed instantly. I couldn't wait to see where he would take me for dinner. Me and my husband only ate at home and rarely took takeouts because that was cheaper than going and having dinner in the restaurants. I never got the chance to dress fancy, but I felt that I was finally getting my chance to enjoy everything. When my husband called me the next day to ask how things were at home, I told him everything was fine. I was confused as to whether to tell him that I was going for dinner with his boss or not. I decided it's better to not share that with him. He would have asked too many questions, and I wasn't ready for those questions at that point of time. I got ready just in time as the doorbell rang, and the boss was standing on the door waiting for me. We got to his car and made our way to the restaurant. He took me for dinner at a very high-class restaurant. I had expected that. We were taken to a secluded booth which gave us privacy. I didn't know how to feel about the situation. I was sitting in a top-rated restaurant in the city with my husband's boss. I decided to not overthink and just go with the flow. He ordered me wine, and after a few drinks, we started flirting with each other more directly than we did on texts. It was refreshing to experience this with him. My husband used to flirt with me before we got married, but then responsibilities took over and the romance took a back seat. That night, flirting was on the front seat again, and I loved every second of it. I was tipsy, and I don't know what came over me as I went to his side of the booth and then kissed him on the cheeks. We suddenly kissed each with lots of passion, and it seemed so good. I had never in my dreams thought about kissing someone in such a fancy place. After some time, as I realized what I was doing, I pulled back from him. It hit me what I had done. I started feeling guilt for going behind my husband's back like this. Boss started comforting me, telling me it was okay, and I had done nothing wrong. The way he comforted me made me more emotional, and I hugged him again. He then took me to his house. He knew that I was attracted to him, and I knew he was attracted to me as well. That night, I slept with him. I had thought to not think about the consequences and enjoy this small, good part of my life. My husband called me while I was at my boss's house only. He told me that he was going to the airport and would be home by the evening. I told him that I can't wait for him to come back to me. I then cursed myself for telling that to him. We didn't like that to each other anymore. Even if he didn't know that something was wrong before, he would know now. I facepalmed myself and then started to get ready to get back to my home. I didn't think that I was going to meet the boss again. I had only thought that it was a one-night thing. I smiled at him as I didn't want things to get awkward and then made my way to exit his house. But then he stopped me before I could leave. He asked me when he would see me again. I was confused as to what he was trying to ask. He repeated then that he wanted to see and that one night wasn't enough. I felt happy that he wanted me like that, but I was also confused as to how I could do this behind my husband's back without him finding out about this. I voiced my concern to him, and he told me that I need not worry about anything. He will make sure that my husband doesn't get to know. I believed him because I also wanted to meet him again. I knew I was doing the wrong thing, but I couldn't control myself. I wanted this man a lot. He told me that he will make plans for us and let me know via text. He kissed me again, and then I left for my home. My husband came back in the evening just as I was done cooking his favorite pasta for him. He seemed happy. He told me that his work has gone really well and he can soon expect a promotion. I was happy for him, but in my head I was thinking, will he be able to treat me like his boss does even after getting promotion? I was so confused as to what I was doing in my life. Was I making a mistake, or I was grabbing the lifetime opportunity of having fun and enjoying the luxuries that I was not going to get with my husband? I didn't let my doubts change my decision. I deserved to have fun. So I started seeing my husband's boss behind his back. He would text me the location, and I would meet him there while my husband was at work. His boss made sure that my husband was stacked with work so we could get enough time together. I felt a little bad that he was so occupied from work because of my selfish desires. But then the boss told me that my husband liked to work. He was enjoying it. I knew that was true because he liked spending more time at work than with me. I let the guilt go and enjoyed the moments. Boss always had some or other expensive gift for me. It was like he knew what was going to make me happy. Sometimes he would get me makeup and skincare from celebrity brands. Sometimes he would just randomly take me to stores like Dior and let me pick whatever I wanted. I thrived on his attention. I couldn't remember the last time I was so happy in my life. I made sure that I hid all the gifts in the closet so that my husband would never find out about them. I had no explanation if he ever came to find out about that. Boss took care of all my needs. Everything I wanted, he made sure I got. I made sure that we were happy in the bedroom. Me and my husband had stopped getting away before I started my affair, so he didn't doubt anything when I started my affair. I finally thought that this could be my ideal life. I had stopped fighting with my husband because there was no need anymore. I was getting those things from both. Everything was finally okay in our life. I didn't get affected when my husband put all his attention to his work. He didn't get angry at me anymore because I had stopped complaining. It was the idle life I had wanted, but it all got ruined until I had to face reality and come to terms with what I had done. One day while I was in the kitchen in the morning, my husband asked if I had seen his blue tie. I had kept it somewhere in the closet but didn't exactly remember where. I told him to look for it in the closet itself. I went back to making breakfast when I heard him coming downstairs with a luxury brand bag. He asked me what this Dior scarf was doing in my closet. I was completely shocked at his question. It had totally slipped my mind that I had hidden my gifts in the closet when I asked him to look there. I started thinking of a lie on the spot, and then eventually told him that it belonged to a friend of mine. She had just told me to keep it here since it's very expensive. She was moving houses and didn't want it to get damaged or lost. He believed me, and then I took the bag from him and told him that I'll keep it back and get his tie on the way back as well. I immediately went and checked if he had seen any other bags, but fortunately for me, it was only this bag. I thought of hiding the gifts somewhere else later. It slipped my mind again to hide the gifts as I got busy with other things. One day, me and the boss were going to a very exclusive VIP event. He had been invited and I was going there as his plus one. I had told my husband that I was going to meet my friend and will help her in packing as she is shifting to a new house. I had told him that it will get late, so I'll spend the night there and then come back home the next day. He told me it was fine to take care. I got dressed in a very beautiful Chanel dress. I couldn't believe my luck. A few months ago, I was window shopping at the mall because I couldn't afford anything, and now I am getting dressed in Chanel. The evening was beautiful. There were many photographers. It was a gallery opening of a celebrity artist, and various celebrities were attending it as well. There were various photographers as well. I didn't pay attention to anything then. Just enjoyed the evening. I wasn't used to being in places with such high-profile people. I then went with the boss to his home and spent the night there with him. I got back home the next day around noon thinking that my husband would be in the office. I didn't expect to find my husband sitting in the living room reading the newspaper. I asked in a casual tone why he didn't go to the office as I made my way to the kitchen to make some coffee for myself. I heard him telling me that he was waiting for me. I thought it was weird, but let it go. He then asked me how my night was. I told him it was nice. I lied to him as to how I helped my friend packing up everything, etc., etc. By the time my story had finished, my husband had come to the kitchen. He looked like he was angry, but I couldn't understand why. I asked him what's wrong, and then he showed me the newspaper where there was a picture of me in his boss's arms. It was from the gallery. The picture was really small, but it was clear that it was me and him. I looked to my husband to tell him something about how it wasn't true, but the anger in his eyes shut me up. He then went and brought all the bags that I had hidden in the closet. I even forget to take the bill out of them. All those bills were signed to his boss. I was literally screwed. My husband got even more angry after that. He told me how I didn't think that I would go so low just for fame and money. He then asked me harshly if I was sleeping with his boss. I had tears in my eyes. There wasn't any point in denying the truth, so I just nodded and kept crying. He looked like he was hurt for a bit, but then told me to get out of his house. He said that he never wants to see my lying face. I tried to go closer to him to hug him and apologize to him, but he stepped back and crossed his arms. He left the house and told me that he wanted me gone by the time he got back home. I called up the boss in tears. I was going to ask him if I could stay over at his place for a few days, but a woman picked up his phone. I asked her who she was, and she told me that she was his fiancée. That was a shock to my system. He had told me that he was single and lived alone in the city. The woman on the line must have known who I was, as she started calling me names for sleeping with her fiancé. I couldn't believe what she was telling me. After getting yelled at, I ended the call. I didn't know what the fuck to do anymore since I had lost my husband and my house and had no place to go. Boss had also lied to me. I had no idea he had a fiancé. I wasn't going to get homeless. I sat in my living room and thought that I was going to convince my husband to forgive me. I had believed that once he gets to know the circumstances which led to everything, he will forgive me, and we would be able to start a new phase of life from that point. I waited anxiously for him to come back home. He came back home after 3 to 4 hours with bloody knuckles. I asked him what had happened, but he didn't reply to me. He looked at me with murder in his eyes and asked me why I was still there. I went to get the first aid box and came to him, but when I touched his shoulder, he pushed me away and then started telling me how everything was fucked up for me. He told me that he had gone to see his boss and punched him. He then told me how he had a fiancé. He laughed when he saw my face in confusion. "The player got played, huh?" he said sarcastically. He told me how his fiancée was living in Canada and they were doing long distance. He then revealed the whole truth that his fiancée had also seen the picture and came here to talk to him. "She will take him back and you will have nowhere to go," he said in an angry whisper. I asked him if she could take him back. Why couldn't he take me back? He then laughed and told me because he wasn't stupid like her. My husband had talked to his boss's fiancée and even convinced her to forgive his fiancée. He knew that if she forgave him, he would end everything with me. He said that he wasn't stupid, that he would end things with me and would keep the option open that I could go with his boss. He then scanned all the bags and looked me in the eye. He told me that I had cheated on him for all this only. He then laughed as my phone rang. His boss was calling me. My husband told me to pick it up. Boss told me that his fiancée gave all the gifts back, so I should send it back to their home. I was shocked but didn't know what else to do. My husband kept smirking at me. I went to my closet and picked out all the gifts that he had given me. My husband was waiting in the living room when I came back. He told me that he had already called the lawyer and soon the divorce proceedings will start. I begged him to give me another chance, but he didn't listen to me. He told me that I was the worst person on this planet and to leave the house immediately. I packed a bag and then left the house. I went to a friend's place. She let me stay in her house for a few nights, but then her husband came back from the trip and she told me it was best that I left her house. Even my closest friend didn't trust me to be around her husband anymore. I then left the house and went to my parents' place. They weren't talking to me as my husband had told them the truth, but they let me stay there for a short while. My husband's lawyers contacted me soon and told me about the divorce proceedings. I started looking for a job, but it was hard to find one since I had no experience. I got married immediately after college. I felt like I had suddenly been in the lowest phase of my life. Just because of greed and desire, I lost one of the most important relationships of my life. The divorce process began, and it was done quite quickly. I expected it to be dragged through a year. I had hoped that maybe within this year, I could seek the forgiveness of my husband. But all hope went to vain, as the process only took 3 months. Even in those 3 months, my husband made sure to have minimum contact with me. His lawyers handled everything from his end, whereas my lawyers represented my side. The court didn't grant me any substantial alimony. All the facts were in favor of my husband, and his lawyers knew what they were doing. My lawyers couldn't do anything. I had already lost everything. My husband, my marriage. I didn't even get to be with my affair partner thanks to my husband. It was all my fault. I cannot blame my husband for what had happened to me, because what he was doing was just a reaction to my actions. Update. It's been a year since my last post. I see all your comments. I know it was my mistake. I was so young back then that I thought I was missing out on my life by being with my husband. I thought that his hard work and struggle was not of any importance, and I realize now how stupid that was. I have taken a job as a nanny. It doesn't pay well, but it's something which is better than nothing. I shifted to a studio apartment in the not-so-good location of the city. I feel like I have lost hope of anything good happening to me now. I have become the wife who slept with husband's boss just because she wanted expensive gifts. Everyone who knows what has happened looks at me with disgust in their eyes. I just keep my head down in shame, my heart filled with guilt for what I have done. My ex-husband, on the other hand, is doing really well. He got a promotion at work. He wears expensive suits now. He's on the ladder of success while I'm on the road to hell. I've heard from someone that he had also started dating someone really hot. I feel happy for him even though I'm sad for myself. I could have been that woman beside him enjoying all the luxuries if I had patience to stick with him in his struggling times. He deserves all the success that is coming his way. He deserved every bit of it, while I deserve all the hurt and feeling of shame I feel every day. Thank you everyone for listening till here. You know, sometimes coming from a big family comes with a price of betrayal and disloyalty. The person or the people you had thought had your back turned your back on you and betrayed you in a most cruel way. When you report the issue to the elders, they take the other person's side. I don't know if you understand me. I had brought someone from the outside who I thought would build and extend my home, but instead, she extended someone else's home, and that person was my cousin. Imagine. It's still hard talking about this. In order to heal, I have to share it and move on. As hard as it is, I have to man up and face the music, no matter how bad the tune is. Some will understand what I'm talking about, and some will catch it later. So I, M33, am naturally a quiet and reserved person. I love peace, but people take that for a ride. I got married when I was only 23 years old. I thought I had found my soulmate or the right person to share my life and grow old with, not knowing that I was actually bringing someone who would be my worst nightmare. I grew up in a village that was ruled by a king, meaning we live by rules. And if you ever do something unlawful, the king and the village people will ban you. A man had to go to the reed dance where maidens usually do their singing and traditional dancing competitions. Also to do a termly checkup if they were still pure virgins. So young and old men would attend the dance, some to watch the maidens and some to choose wives for themselves. My father was in a polygamous marriage. He had 3 wives and he chose all of them from the reed dance a long time ago. In our village, a man had to have more than 2 wives who would bear him children to expand the family surname. That tradition started way back from our great ancestors, till now it's still in operation. But nowadays, some choose maidens to use them for their selfish reasons. Some old men would choose young girls to become their wives at a young age. It's disgusting and shameful, I tell you. So I found my wife, or must I say my ex-wife, during the reed dance. My father had asked me and my brothers to go and watch it. Maybe we would get ourselves wives. Well, to tell the truth, I didn't want a wife. I was still young to have a wife. I still wanted to enjoy my young life, but if you are a boy from the villages that are ruled by kings, and your father is a king's servant, it's compulsory for us to get wives, not those city wives, but well-respected and dignified wives from the village. So there was this beautiful lady that had caught my eyes. She was a medium-sized, dark woman. She was dancing so beautifully, I was taken back, no lie. Until it was her turn to do the dance, she danced and came to my direction. I had thought she was going to choose one of my brothers. Only to see her coming straight to me, she took my hand and put on a beaded bracelet that symbolizes that she had chosen me to be her boyfriend. I was really taken back by her act. She was really amazing as she was doing her dance. A week later, we had started seeing and knowing each other on another level. She was polite and very humble. Her smile was so beautiful, and it complemented her beauty so well. I enjoyed every moment I had spent with her. Our relationship kept growing to a point that a few months later, I told my father that I was ready to take a wife. I then decided to take the next step and ask my uncles and brothers to stand in on my behalf to go to Pamela's F30 homestead to ask for her hand in marriage. After everything was done traditionally, we asked to get married in church only. Our relationship was a bliss. Well, at least that's what I had thought. Pamela was so sweet and loved people, so she got along very well with my siblings, especially my male cousin. I had thought that their friendship was pure and innocent since they were the same age. I took Pam as my wife when she had just turned 20 and she had dreams of going to university to further her studies. So I had to make a plan as her husband to make sure that she achieves her dreams and goals. That time I was working at Transnet as a transport admin clerk, so I was able to afford her fees. The following year, Pam got enrolled at Durban University of Technology, which was far away from our village. As much as I was not comfortable for her to live in the city, but she had to chase her dreams, and my cousin was also attending the same university. So I was somehow relieved that at least one of the people I trusted was there with her. I would see my wife during school holidays or when I was not working, so I had to drive to Durban to see her. Sometimes I would find her at the students' accommodation chilling with my cousin. I didn't pay much attention to that because I trusted them, thinking they would never betray me, but I guess I had to trust a stone than a human being. So 3 years passed, and Pamela graduated from university. In her first year in university, she got pregnant, and unfortunately, we lost the pregnancy. I was really heartbroken, so was Pam, but her situation was worse because she even distanced herself. She started spending more time with my cousin even when she was home. She was no longer doing her wifely duties as she was supposed to. I had thought she was grieving, but can a person grieve for the whole 3 years, and during those years, you would see her beautiful smile and loud laugh when she was with my cousin? When she was with my cousin, she would be smiling more and carefree. I once confronted them about their close friendship, but they denied my allegations, even though my conscience was telling me another story. Their coziness and the way they were free with each other raised an eyebrow. I am a person who loves doing morning runs to freshen my mind and get a good morning breeze before going to work. I once asked Pam to join me and got offended thinking I was body shaming her. I didn't understand her outburst because she allowed my cousin to call her fat when they were teasing each other. So I let her be. and continued to do my runs. Sometimes I would do long runs if I wanted to clear my head. So one Sunday afternoon, I had just returned home from a long run. I walked into the living room and saw my wife and cousin sitting on the couch, laughing and chatting like they were old friends. I felt a sudden pang of unease, but I brushed it off as mere paranoia. Plus, they had told me that there was going on when I had confronted them. But as I watched them, I noticed something strange. My wife and cousin were being too familiar with each other, too touchy-feely. They were sitting too close, their legs touching, and their hands resting on each other's knees. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. My suspicions got high, and I decided to investigate this issue to ease my conscience, but I was really confident that something was really going on between the two. So I decided to investigate further. I started asking questions again, pretending to be oblivious to what was going on. But my wife and cousin were too clever. They saw right through my act. They denied everything, telling me I was being paranoid and reading too much into their friendship. But I knew the truth. I could feel it in my bones. And I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. As the days passed, I became more and more obsessed with uncovering the truth. I started following my wife and cousin, watching their every move. I would wait for them not too far from their favorite spot near the river, or follow them when they were saying they were going to town. My wife would say she was accompanying my cousin to town. I was determined to catch them in the act, to see for myself what was going on. I didn't take my wife's accompanying cousin to town. During my investigation, I once took my wife's phone. I knew her password since she also knew mine. I checked her socials and found out that she had been sending my cousin her pictures wearing lingerie. More like different ones. I didn't even know that she had lingerie. There were also videos of my wife doing those seductive dances and sending them to my cousin. I was oblivious about what I saw. I got so angry to a point that I wanted to attack them both. In rural areas, the thing called divorce doesn't exist, especially if you are married traditionally. So Pam and I are tied to each other by God and ancestors. I couldn't even share the same bed as her. She had shown me that she was not the innocent and humble girl I had found or that had chosen in front of my father and siblings. She even gave me a beaded bracelet that symbolizes love, meaning I would be stuck with her till the end of time, unless if she gets married to another family, then the elders would have to consult with the ancestors, my home ancestors, to relieve and allow her to be introduced in another surname and ancestors. Before I took the matter to the adults, I confronted the wife about the videos and her conversation with my cousin. The nerve she had to just stare at me and lie on my face, but I had every proof that she was cheating, so I slapped her hard. She couldn't believe it because I was not a violent person. I respect my peace. After I slapped her, she ran out, and I was pretty sure that she was going to cry to my cousin. My cousin came to me looking deadly. He started fighting me till the fight escalated to a point that my brothers came in to stop the fight. I was furious at the fact that they both had lied to me, to my face, when I asked what was going on. The way I was so angry, I wanted to hurt someone so bad. I mean, how could this girl choose me in front of my family, then she goes and does this shameful act while married to me, with my cousin? The fact that I had trusted them when they went to university together, I thought their friendship was pure. Little did I know that I was made a fool and deceived. My brothers asked us to sit down and solve whatever issue that we had, civilly. I didn't want to solve anything. I wanted them to feel the wrath of making me a fool. The brothers asked what we were fighting about. I told them that I will tell them once I have gathered enough information about the wife of mine and dear cousin. So I became obsessed with finding hard proof, and I wanted the family to know about the snake they were keeping in our yard. I didn't want them to see only pictures and messages because they would definitely deny everything, so I planned to find them on the act. I know it was evil of me, but what would I have done? And finally, after weeks of surveillance, I got my proof. I saw them together, in a secluded spot, their arms around each other, their lips locked in a passionate kiss. I felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over me, and I knew I had to do something. I took pictures of them, but they were not enough for the family to believe me. I mean, this girl was a virgin when I married her, meaning she started getting loose when I had taken her virginity. After that, she saw a great opportunity to do infidelity, not with someone from university, but she decided to do it with my cousin. The person I live with is in the same yard. That was pure disrespect, and to be taken for a ride. I wanted to show them what being taken for a ride was like. I wanted them to regret the day they first got attracted to each other. A few weeks later, they went back to university. I was obsessed with finding whatever that was going on between. I couldn't rest without finding the hard evidence, so I was able to convince the family to allow me to leave the loose cannon. I kept my wife and cousin's shameful act for a while because I didn't want to be embarrassed in front of the whole family. I know some would say I have failed to rule my house and look at me as a weak man. Already I was feeling like a failure that my wife had chosen to find solace in another man's arms. What pisses me off more is that Pam didn't even bother saying anything. I mean, communication is one of the greatest keys to a successful and strong marriage and relationship. Why did she fail to communicate with me, and why did she agree to marry me knowing very well that she had some feelings for my cousin? I felt like a fool. A few months later, things were getting worse. My wife and cousin were unstoppable to a point that even the elders had noticed the relationship they had. I tried denying so that I would tell them when I have gathered much concrete evidence. So I asked one of the boys from the village who was doing IT at their university to help me plant a camera in my wife's residential room, also in my cousin's room. I couldn't even look my wife in the eyes because in front of the elders she acted like a good wife, while I knew that she was a fox on a sheep's skin. One day she came to our bedroom and asked us to talk. There was nothing I wanted to talk to her about, so I told her to go to her boyfriend's room, but she refused and caused a scene. Thanks to the fact that when we got married, we were forced to build our own house in the yard since it was big enough for plenty of houses. So when she caused a scene and started kicking things, acting like a psycho, I slapped her and she fell on the bed. She started fighting back, but I just took out my belt and whipped her with it. Did I do wrong by acting like that? I was avoiding being called an abuser or a woman beater, so that's why I opted to whip her like a child, because she was acting like one. For the whole month, she went back to university. I missed her, I missed my wife. My mind and body wanted me to drive to Durban so I could see her and maybe apologize. But what would I be apologizing for, because I was a victim in all this ordeal? My heart wanted nothing to do with her. As much as it was heartbreaking and disappointing to know that my wife was attending the same school as my cousin. Where was the bro code there? How could you sleep or even develop a relationship with your cousin's wife? It's just so disgusting and disloyal. A couple of months later, my father and the elders summoned me and Pam to a family meeting regarding the issue that we were facing. I had recently gotten the evidence I was looking for. I couldn't wait to show the family what the Virgin Mary of a wife I had and their precious son, who is my cousin, did, all in the name of we're going to study in Durban, while their study was getting on top of each other doing shameful acts. Worst part, the woman is married, so when she gets to Durban, her panties get loose and forget that she has a husband back at home. I was in so much fury. I wanted to destroy them both for making me a fool. If I was green, I would have looked like Hulk when angry. I was going crazy because I loved this girl. She was my perfect imperfection, but she was a slut. I had thought Virgin Marys were loyal and honest, but I guessed wrong. She became my worst nightmare in a few years of our marriage. Well, I found out when we were a few years into our marriage. Maybe they started sleeping together right after our wedding day. Who knows? So the family called and addressed the issue that we were facing and that there was a big elephant in the room. You wouldn't believe who that big elephant in the room is. It was me. Imagine, I was the big elephant in the room, meaning I was the one on the wrong in all of everything that my so-called wife and my cousin were doing. Their abomination made me look like a bad person. The elders kept talking and yapping about me failing to maintain my house and my wife's needs. I got really pissed off because the very same wife they were defending and telling me that I was failing was the same wife that had asked me that she had a wish to further her studies, but they couldn't afford it at her home. I took that responsibility as her husband and paid for her studies. Now I am an incompetent and failing husband. Those people were shitting on me. I'm telling you. So as they were still blubbering and exchanging words, I asked them to follow me to the lounge. There was something I needed to show them. I then asked them to call cousin, also because he was also part of the meeting, so I didn't understand why he was not in the room with us. When the cousin was called, I took out the USB that the boy I had paid gave me and put it on a TV, then pressed play. Some elders were in awe when they watched the video of my wife and cousin getting it on in Pam's student room while her roommate was out. Some were shouting at me as if I was a child, telling me to switch the thing off, while others called me heartless and selfish. Well, those who called me heartless and selfish were my cousin's parents, meaning they knew about the abomination that their son was doing with my wife. I remember hearing my cousin's mother saying I was the reason why my wife found comfort in another man's bed. It was because I was not a man enough and didn't have balls to rule and treat a woman. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to at least defend me, but they just looked at me like I had grown horns. That time the video was still playing. I was actually enjoying the show, much to the elders' annoyance, who kept telling me to switch it off. Pam was crying and kept asking that I switch off the video and fix our relationship. I don't know what was happening to me, but I got disgusted the moment she opened her slutty mouth. I switched the video off after I played it for a full 30 minutes. I called Pam's parents to join us because I didn't understand why they didn't call her parents. I mean, if it was a family meeting, both families were supposed to be present, but my family decided to deal with the issue alone and not include my wife's family. A while later, they arrived and I asked for the meeting to continue since all parties and their families were present. I then played the video again so that my in-laws would get an idea of why they were urgently called to the family meeting. Pam was busy weeping like someone had died, while my cousin looked at me like he begged for my blood. But I didn't care less because what they did to me was inhumane. No man would wish to see his wife getting banged by another man. Am I a bad person? The family meeting ended, and I had announced that I wanted to divorce Pam, but as expected, I was told that I can't divorce her because she was already a part of the family ancestrally, and I am connected to her since I was the one who took her innocence. I didn't understand that because even if she was a part of the family ancestrally, she could have still went back to her home, and I had paid for her innocence, so what they were saying was bullshit. A few weeks later, the family called another family meeting since my issue with Pamela was not resolved. Everyone was angry at how the meeting had turned. Names were exchanged, and it was a mess, and to top it all, they were blaming for my wife's infidelity. I would have understood if she had cheated with another boy from her school, but she decided to just cheat with one of my family members. The family sat me down and told me the things I didn't want to hear and I never expected. They pleaded with me to forgive my cousin and move on because what happened had happened. There was no way of changing or undoing what had happened. I couldn't believe them, so I asked if I were to forgive my cousin, what about the wife? Should I forgive her also? I couldn't accept the plea, and I didn't want to because they were taking me for a ride. They didn't take my heartbreak, my dignity, and my place as the victim. I was the victim in all of the situations, so I didn't understand how they could take the side of the people who betrayed me in the most cruel and shameful way. I was not going to forgive them. Pamela's family came to fetch her a month after the meeting had taken place. They were disappointed and hurt by their daughter's act. I assured them that I would continue paying for Pam's university fees so they wouldn't worry about it, but I wanted nothing to do with her. I wanted her gone. My father came to my house a while after my in-laws had departed. He also talked me out about forgiving my family. I didn't understand, and it shocked me that my own father didn't see things in my perspectives, and he didn't care about my feelings, rather the cousin's feelings and well-being. The only people I had support from were my brothers. I would never forget them for the support they had given me during my heartbreak period. About 5 months later, Pam's family came back with Pam. She was pushing a very big stomach. They came to our homestead to report Pam's pregnancy. I just didn't know how to feel about the whole thing because she had told me that she wanted to focus on her modules, so she didn't want any child. I understood her, but she had the nerve to open legs for my cousin and allow him to pull out inside her. What if the guy had a sickness or a virus, and if I didn't find out about the affair they were having, she was going to continue sleeping with me while sleeping with my cousin also. It's just disgusting. So, the family asked who the child belonged to. I thought she was going to tell the truth and there was really no need to ask who the father of the baby was. Instead, she told the family that the child was mine and she won't be able to take care of the child alone while she was still traditionally married and she wanted to come back home to her husband. I told her to take the pregnancy to its rightful owner because I was not going to take any responsibility for the pregnancy I knew nothing about. And the last time I had been intimate with her, we used a protection, her rules. And it was 9 months before, which meant if the child was mine, she would have given birth by the time she came to my house to report the pregnancy. The hate I had for her grew more and more to a point that I even hated her smell. Why would she do something like that? Was she hoping that I would acknowledge and accept her lies while she knew the truth? I was not going and willing to do such a foolish thing. She should have thought twice before coming to my house to give me the child that was not mine. That thing was not going to affect only me, but the child also, because if I had acknowledged her pregnancy and took responsibility for the child was going to get sick because my cousin and I are not using the same surnames. I still loved her very much, but I couldn't allow her to make me a fool once again. So I threw her and her family out. I didn't care if she fell and got hurt. I was in the mix of hurt and anger. My family kept pestering me about forgiving my cousin because it was not good to stay angry at a family member for too long. In everything they had said, I only noticed that they were only asking me to forgive my cousin, but not my wife. If I asked why, they never mentioned anything or asked me to forgive Pamela also, because they were both on the wrong. The answers I got were, my wife didn't show any respect for herself and the family she got married to, meaning she was the cause of the drift between my cousin and I. The unfairness and politics they had, I didn't want to involve myself in it, so I came up with the decision of forgiving none of them because both of them were the cause of the drift. Things got tense and sour at home. The family was angry at me for having a cold heart, as they had put it. It was no longer a happy and united family. Well, they assumed that I was the one who made things like how they got, because if I had not released or showed them the video and pictures of Pamela and my cousin, none of the family members would be angry at each other. My father took my cousin's side and told me that if I gave my wife time and attention, she wouldn't have fallen in another man's arms, so everything was on me. I couldn't believe my father. I mean, these two people embarrassed me and tarnished my dignity as a man and a husband. Was I not supposed to go to work so I could provide for my wife and be able to pay for her university fees? Was not a man enough by wanting and striving for what's best for my wife and our future children? Please make me understand, because I am really failing to. Time passed and I moved out from home because things were no longer the same. My father had started getting sick. My brothers said I was the cause of his sickness because of my selfishness. I was shocked when my brothers had also turned their backs on me. I mean, I didn't ask my father to take my cousin's side and not put his own child to his best interests. Instead, he joined the people who wanted to tarnish my name and forced me to forgive my cousin. I had no problem forgiving my cousin, you know? But what pissed me off more is the fact that they were treating my cousin as the victim in everything, and I was the villain. I decided to move out. Well, I got an apartment in the city, so I would be closer to work. But before I moved out, I got cursed by my aunt, cousin's mom, wishing bad luck upon me. That was pure witchcraft and evil of her. How can you curse your brother's child for your son's doings? I was so disappointed with my family, they even made me choose that I should either forgive my cousin or move out of the homestead until I have made up my mind and stop acting like a teenager. I chose to move out, not because I was childish or something, but I wanted them to consider their statements. They were all in the wrong, and I felt like they were acknowledging that the mess my cousin made along with my wife was a good thing. There were two parties in the ordeal, but they wanted me to forgive only one part. How fair is that? A couple of months later, I received a call from Pamela, asking for forgiveness and wanting to fix things. I didn't have time for her and her emotional blackmailing. During those months, Pamela's father passed on, and I was forced to go and pay my respect to the family as a husband, of course. In our culture, you are forced to attend either a funeral or any ceremony for your in-laws because you and that family are lawfully banded to each other, meaning you are one of them even if you and your husband no longer get along. Since we lived in the village that is ruled by the king, what happens in your household must stay and be solved in your household, and make sure that the family household issues do not reach the outside community. Unless if someone has done something unlawful and endangering the villagers, then the issue will be taken to the king. The king will then decide how to punish that sinner and what kind of punishment is good for them. So on the other hand, my issue was a family issue. So I had to pretend in front of the nosy villagers to be in good space with Pamela. It was really hard pretending, but it somehow felt good to be in her presence again, even though my heart was no longer beating for her. It had released her. So I played my good husband and son-in-law role for the whole weekend. It was really hard pretending. People, please don't pretend, rather be rare and real than being fake and famous. It was not nice. Pamela's baby was looking so much like my cousin. And that really added to my hard heart, because she was so sure that the child was mine, knowing very well that I was not the father. What was she hoping to achieve? Because even if the child had turned out to be mine, I wouldn't have gotten back with her, but I would have taken responsibility for my child. The following year, Pamela graduated from university. I was really happy and proud of her. I mean, she showed me that I was not paying for anything, so it made me proud that she took her modules seriously. The relationship of my cousin and Pamela continued. I guess she was not really apologizing when she came to apologize the last time. Their relationship was no longer a secret. Villagers had found out about it, and my family became the talk of the village. Truthfully, I didn't feel anything when they officialized their relationship, not even a pang of jealousy, which meant I was really over Pamela. So I called the whole family for a meeting. It had been since I had hatred and hunger for vengeance towards my cousin and Pamela, so it was time to let things be and let bygones be bygones. Not for them, but for my conscience and peace. I didn't want my family to keep hating me for something I would have long done. So during the meeting, I asked them to call Pam and my cousin. When everyone was there, I then told them that I was forgiving them and gave them my blessings to their relationship. After I had told them that, I then took the beaded bracelet that Pam had given me when she chose me and gave it back to her, so she can give it to the right person since I was no longer her man. Another month passed. My cousin asked me to accompany him to ask for a hand in marriage for Pam at her homestead. I knew my cousin was somehow cheesy, but he should have known at least half of our traditions since he also grew up in the village. My father had gotten better after I had released my heart and appeased the ancestors for my behavior. So he told my cousin that Pamela was lawfully and ancestrally married to me, meaning she belonged to my family clans, so if he wanted to ask for Pam's hand in marriage, he should do that to me. I had never thought that such a facade would one day happen to me, like having to hand my wife, or must I say ex-wife, to my cousin. It was just unbelievable. I still believed that they would somehow break up and realize their wrongs. I had once asked Pam why she gave me the beaded bracelet if she wanted to be with my cousin, and what I got was she was advised by her mother that she should choose me in the reed dance because I would be able to take care of her and her family, so she had to pause her relationship with my cousin. How crazy is that? So she told me that she knew that I would be able to take her to school and build her home because I had a good-paying job and my cousin was still a student. That was why she chose to go to Durban University of Technology, so she can be able to see and be with my cousin, meaning that she used me for her own and her family's benefit. I wouldn't have been surprised if her mother also advised her to say that the child was mine, knowing very well that there was no possible way the child would have been mine. I was no longer angry or disappointed, but I was aggrieved, so she chose me because I was a meal ticket to her. I was going to be Bob the Builder in her home and be the student fund in her studies. I couldn't say anything anymore, but I was glad that she had told me the whole truth at the end. Her bride price was paid and she was officially out of my life. Did I deal with the situation in the wrong way? Please advise me.